What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Lab. This one we're starting up a little late, going on the Tuesday. Missed a couple of games, but thankfully, the only reason why we're able to do this is because there wasn't much going on Monday. Pretty slim slate, so a lot of these series are starting up on Tuesday, today. So we're going to get after it today. Don't have the graphics with me either today. Been a little sick, under the weather, so playing through a little flu game here, but we're still going to talk about these series, these games that you see on the screen. Going to go through them all, give you my thoughts on them, of course. Let me just preface it because I think this is something that I'll be paying attention to for the next couple of days because we are left with just baseball for the most part for the next couple of days until Thursday. The NBA final starts. We talk about this. I think every time baseball is kind of by itself on the slate, especially now, they're probably sending the good baseballs out. And we've seen this time and time again when baseball is the only sport on for the night. We see really good hitting conditions, which today, on Tuesday, they're okay. We have some spots with really, really nice wind, really good conditions. But overall, there seems to be a lot of offense in the spots. And I don't think it's merely a coincidence. It also does help that we do have some pretty solid matchups with a couple of these lineups against pitching staffs or pitchers, starting pitchers, whoever you want to call it. But I do want to be relatively picky with, spots for unders. So you won't see me on too many of them for the next couple of days. There is like one or two that I kind of like today. But other than that, I want to be very careful. We can start here. This is a series that scares the hell out of me. This, I guess it's not first on the screen, but we can find it here because I'll go in the order of the banners that we have up. Or actually, I might have those. Yeah, we'll go Milwaukee, Philly first, and I'll find it on the screen here. So this is starting up today, game 2 of the series. We're going to get Koenig opening in front of Rhea, going up against Christopher Sanchez. I think this is one of those games where you see runs. We talk about what Christopher Sanchez has done. His numbers have started to trickle down a little bit over the past couple of games, and he's still a guy that I believe in. But when you look up and down the Brewers lineup, there's a lot of guys that I think could give him a lot of trouble, which I'm pulling up his stats here now. Like, he's a good pitcher. He's been really good at getting the ball on the ground. He's a sinker baller, of course. So you see kind of the highlight of his stats here would be this ground ball rate, 97th percentile. Very, very good. Hard hit rate's a little worrisome, which is what I think some of the Brewers can get to him. His expected stats are not fantastic either. So, like I said, he's a guy that I do genuinely believe in the long term. I think he's just going to be a solid arm in that rotation. But the Brewers lineup is a little tricky of a matchup for him, I would say, because they have a couple righties in that lineup that get the ball in the air, and I think it cause some trouble for him. You've seen that from one of the randomly hottest hitters in baseball over the past couple of weeks, and definitely one of the hottest in that lineup, like Joey Ortiz has the capability to do that. Gary Sanchez can give you a stray nuke every once in a while. William Contreras is like one of the obvious answers too. Like, he's in there. He's a really good bat from the right side. So I do think he's going to have a little bit of trouble today. I think this could be a home run problem for Christopher Sanchez in this matchup. And on the other side, after Koenig, which Koenig could give the top of that lineup trouble, he's probably going to go through, an inning or two against the lefties, probably get through that relatively clean. After that, Colin Rea, not much confidence with what he's been able to do lately, which hasn't been much. He's been, I don't know. I don't want to say the model of consistency because that's not at all what the case is. Last year, he was just kind of an average pitcher. You knew exactly what you're going to get from him kind of every start. Now, not so much. Like, the 3.7 ERA is not alarming, you could say, but I mean, a lot of this over here is, and hasn't gotten any better. Tell you that. It seems like every time I watch Colin Rea, every time you look at his numbers after a start, they're continually getting worse and worse, and not many worse situations than facing the red hot Phillies lineup, even though they have cooled down a little bit since their Linsanity run for a couple of weeks. Still a really good lineup that has plenty of pop, plenty of lefties too that are really going to take advantage of them. Like, I mean, I would be shocked if you don't get a big blast from one of the lefties like Schwarber or Harper in this matchup off of Rea, maybe both. So I mean, this spot screams runs to me. Krabs actually brought this up first in BTL, and I'm glad he did. I like that play, and I'll be tailing that from him. So I think we get runs in that game. Tobias Myers, Aaron Nola. Not a big Tobias Myers fan either in that game. He's not a guy that's thoroughly impressed me whatsoever. 5.4 ERA, alarming. The barrel rate, slightly alarming. He's also a big-time fly ball guy. So, another guy that I think the Phillies should probably have their way with. But yeah, beyond that, definitely getting runs vibes from this series, and especially this game 2 that we're going to see on Tuesday here. Can move to the next game that's on the banner. The Mets going up against the Nationals after we just saw pitching matchup between Trevor McGill and Mackenzie Gore. I initially leaned Mets. I kind of switched myself to first 500. God, that was a terrible move. Definitely one of those series where I think the juice baseballs with baseball by itself were definitely in play. But today, plans kind of changed for the Nationals because now they're throwing DJ Hers out there, their prospect, lefty. Good stuff against David Peterson because Trevor Williams got hurt and he's been sent to the IL. So I don't really know what to think about this game. I will say, like, from the Mets perspective, they were good against lefties, at least strikeout-wise, to start the season. I want to see where they stand now because they've been playing a little better just overall numbers-wise against lefties, which has been huge for them. Like, they're still top 10 in the course of the season. I want to see what they are in May specifically, or I guess May to now that we're a couple days into June. Yeah, they're still solid. They went through a little rough patch where they were really, really bad against left-handed pitching, and that's kind of subsided. They're kind of hitting better, and I guess the prime example of that would be what they did to Mackenzie Gore last night. So I would be a little scared of Hers in his debut against this Mets team, who's playing a little better as of recent. Don't love David Peterson either, but the Nats are, I mean, they've just been god-awful against any left-handed pitching for really all season, but especially like the past month, 2 months. So I do like the Mets in that spot. Wouldn't be surprised for runs. We're going to see the same thing with Severino up against Corbin, a lefty on the mound for the Mets and a bad one at that. So, or on the mound for the Nats against the Mets, sorry. And a bad one at that. So I think Corbin does Corbin things. Luis Severino could be a decent arm to watch out for, keeping the ball on the ground against the Nationals. So, yeah, no strong leans for me in this series. I do think another one where you probably see runs. The Mets bullpen has also been really bad and is not in the best rest spot. I know they were much, much worse going into yesterday's game, which I think is one of the reasons why we saw some runs. But, yeah, had Hauser for a little long appearance, and Diekman and Ottavino both pitched. Drew Smith both pitched. I mean, Reed Garrett, I would assume, is going to be available. He's probably their best arm. But other than that, I mean, a lot of options that don't really inspire too much confidence in you, other than the fact that they've just been not great. So wouldn't be surprised if we see some late game heroics from the Nationals against this bullpen. So I guess another reason to believe in runs for not only today, but going into Wednesday as well. I wonder, is that Wednesday game a day start? Because for Patrick Corbin is randomly amazing in day games. So maybe something to be scared of if that does end up being a gay game. I guess we'll find out when we look. But I want to keep moving on. It's going to be a shorter one because we're going over, a much shorter slate of games. We can move to Toronto in this series that, I don't know, dude. I just really don't want to get caught up in the Jays really at all in this series. It feels like a series where, like, yeah, they should eke out a win or two. It's a 4-game series. Kevin Gausman got destroyed last night in that matchup. Now you have a very lopsided pitching matchup in Corbin Burns against what seems to be right now Trevor Richards. I don't know if plans are going to change and it's going to be some kind of bullpen game with like Bowden Francis or whatever the story is. The Jays are they're not hitting right now. And I don't know if that changes against Corbin Burns. It is Corbin Burns that they did see already, and not much strikeout stuff for Corbin Burns in that start, something the Jays have done to a lot of, really good pitchers, but, not much offense to show for it either. So it seems like, they're pesky, and that's kind of how they've been hitting against a lot of teams. They don't strike out all that much against really either side of the plate. They're much better against lefties, obviously, because they have a lot of righties. Corbin Burns does have reverse splits. So a stray bomb from like a Davis Schneider, if he is going to be in the lineup today, or even a Bo Bichette, who's been, god awful for a while now, or a Vladdy, who's been red hot, but the power hasn't been there. It's a lot going on with this Blue Jays lineup that on paper would give you some hope. I just have no interest in getting involved. They're probably going to be sharp, a game or two in the series. They already were in game 1. I just think I'm overall staying off the series, staying off the Blue Jays. I haven't been on the Blue Jays really at all for the past couple of weeks, except I went back to them against Bailey Falter in their last series and god-awful performance. So I'm a little scarred from that, yes, but it's I don't have any interest in fading the Orioles really at all in this series, so you're probably not going to see me do it. And think I'll leave that at that. Next one we can go to, and we will get to all these series. I'm just kind of going in the order here, like I said, um, of what they are in these banners. Detroit at Texas, really good game last night. Really good pitching matchup. We saw Eovaldi and Skubal face off. The game ended, because of a two-home run game from Jake Rogers. Shout out Jose Leclerc for continuing to be terrible and giving the Tigers a win in that series, or in that first game of the series. Today's a little different because now you get Jack Flaherty against Dane Dunning, but I don't really know if it is that different because this is, again, one of the ones that Krabs brought up, and he's on that. And I kind of agree. I don't want to take too many unders when we know the juice balls are going to be in play. This seems like a one I can get behind, though, because Jack Flaherty, while maybe the strikeouts won't be there against the Rangers from the right side, which the Rangers have been much more strikeout prone against lefties so far, I do think he can induce a solid bit of soft contact against them, which is kind of what the Rangers have been doing against a lot of like power pitchers from the right side recently. So, Flaherty's been fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's been a lot on the back of strikeouts, though, and I'm not so sure those will be there against the Rangers, but I think he can pitch to his strengths in this one, and I think this matchup works out for him. On the other side, Dane Dunning has not been fantastic. He's been a guy that gives up a lot of as of late, a lot of barrels, a lot of hard hits. Can bring up his numbers here just so we can see. Barrel rate, hard hit rate couldn't be worse as far as starting pitchers go. The strikeout stuff's been there a little more than expected. Like, I guess we could look at his stats, like whiff rate, K rate, really not there last year. He was a better pitcher in a much different way. It was a lot more soft contact. He was keeping the ball on the ground. Vastly changed coming into this season. The walk rate is concerning. The hard hit rate is concerning. The strikeout stuff is there when he needs it, but it's a lot more boom or bust. Like Dane Dunning last year was just kind of a consistent style of pitching. That's kind of what he employed. Now it feels very different. He's a guy that can give up a lot of home runs, but against the Tigers offense, I think that works kind of to a T. So I think he can have a pretty solid start. I don't like many runs in that series in general, even if we're talking Maeda Urania tomorrow. Can't say I'm going to be caught dead putting coin on that under, but I just don't want to back these offenses right now in these spots. I mean, the Rangers showed me something in that Marlins series, even though it was the Marlins, like they're good against lefties, which is something they've shown really to no one over the past couple of weeks, but got me excited a little bit. But tonight, other than Corey Seager, I really can't find a matchup that I'm super excited about against Flaherty. So not too much into runs there. I'll leave it at that. Won't be taking anything in Maeda Urania in all likelihood. Maybe if I do, stay tuned into BTL for that. But yeah, no initial leans there. Can move over to this Houston series. I've talked about the Astros. I do think they're going to start to make a run here. Maybe we saw the beginning of that last night with that electric comeback and the Yainer Diaz home run to win the game and help cash out run line bettors as well. Shout out Trent. Spencer Getty is someone who I think, because of the start to the season he had when he first got called up, when he was just god awful, people are kind of sleeping on a little bit. I don't say this just because he's a TCU guy that I've kind of had my eye on because, again, he goes under the radar. Nobody really likes him. But if you pay attention to it, like on the surface, the 5.98 ERA doesn't look fantastic, but the strikeout stuff has been gradually improving. The barrel rate and hard hit rate, it was down here, when he first started coming up and made the first couple starts in the big league. It started to tick up a lot. And if you look at like what he's done in the past couple of starts, you can say matchups helped, whatever, but really good against the Mariners, really good against the A's, even though like he gave up 3 runs, 7 strikeouts, though that A's team has been really good against righties. They've been pesky. Slipped up against the Brewers a little bit, but before that, really good start against the A's again, another team who they're the A's, but tough against righties. So like really his last bad start was against the Yankees, which very well may be the worst lineup in baseball. So like other than that game, call the Cubs game what you want, and then the Royals in his major league debut against, they were one of the hottest lineups in baseball at the time. He's, I think, a decent pitcher in my eyes, and I think he's going to continue to get better. So against the lineup with the Cardinals, who they're going to make things tough. I will say, he's probably not my favorite pitcher to back in this spot, but more so just a name I think to watch out for going forward because I do think he just gets generally undervalued. The strikeout department is huge for him, which I mean that's probably one of the reasons why I think he may struggle tonight to have his best stuff. So I kind of do lean Cardinals. It's hard to back Palante though, and I really don't want to fade the Astros because again, I do feel like they're going to go on a run. But I am also, big Cardinals are going to go on a run guy. I've been saying that since the beginning of the season. I was looking like an idiot in that take, the first month of the season, but now look like we're much more in the conversation. So I like these teams on both sides. I think there are names to keep out for on both sides going forward, but maybe lean Cardinals today. Another one where I wouldn't be surprised to see runs because Palante is tough. He's given you a couple decent outings, but the bullpen behind really doesn't scare me. So don't mind the Cards there. Not going to play that though. Then we get to Michaelis Blanco. I think Miles Michaelis, another guy who like sneakily nobody wants to talk about it because they're all stuck in what he was last year. He's been kind of good. People don't want to talk about it nearly enough. So I mean, he's one of the reasons why the Cardinals have had this resurgence. Again, like if you just see 5.54 ERA, you're not going to say this guy's a world beater right now, but you look at what he's done these past couple starts. I mean, he's just giving you quality starts, back to back to back to back. Against a red hot Phillies lineup, he pitched really well against them, and even though he picked up the loss, it really wasn't on him. Cubs lineup, he gave him a quality start. Good against the Red Sox, 5 innings, 1 run. Quality outing against the Brewers, like all these in-division games that have been instrumental for them on the run. He's been very, very solid. But again, I think it's a little tough. And I guess the Astros lineup is pretty tough to project without Tucker, which that's a possibility because he fouled the ball off his shin. Hopefully it's nothing serious. I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup tonight or maybe out for a couple of days or what the story is there. But the Astros, they don't strike out much against right-handed pitching. And we all know Miles Michaelis does not strike out many people anyway. So I think it's kind of a tough match for him knowing how much they're going to put the ball in play. Because it's going to be pretty tough. So like the Astros, they have ticked up, I guess, a little bit. 10th lowest strikeout rate against right-handed pitching in the month of May until now. Add the extra couple of days. So yeah, we'll see what it looks like and what the lineup turns to without Kyle Tucker. But Jordan is heating up, it seems like, and that's a guy I do not want to be in front of Miles Michaelis. Rest of that lineup seems to be getting it together too. So again, Stroh's bats, I mean, this could be a big series for them, even though the Cardinals bullpen is one that I certainly believe in, and I think everybody should as well. Think it's a tough one for Michaelis, but this first game I could see, or second game of the series, first one today, I could see the Cardinals stealing. But yeah, definitely will be on the Astros bats in some form or fashion. Game 3. Can move to the rest of these games. You can go to Colorado, which is right up here. W squad ride on the over in this game in game 1. I do think this is a series where the Reds bats come to play. I talked about that when we were talking about taking the game over for the squad ride, and the Reds put up 13 runs, which is huge. That offense needed to see that. And now we get a pretty interesting matchup in this game, which I'm going straight back to the over in this one at 10.5. Frankie Montas against Ty Block. Ty Block's actually been randomly good himself. Another one of those pitchers where, people aren't talking about it. And I'll even put hand up. We talked about this with the bullpen situation when he was facing the Phillies. I was fading him. I didn't think he'd have a great start against the Phillies. He kind of did. And now he's had back-to-back really good starts against good offenses. 2 of the best teams in the league in cores as well. He went 7 innings, 2 runs against the Guardians, and then just about 7 innings and 2 runs against the Phillies. Got blown up before that, weirdly, on the road against the Giants. But yeah, I think now is the time to fade him. And we talk about what the Reds have kind of done against left-handed pitching. I've said this a million times. With the cast that the Reds have currently, and this means, no Elvi Marte's gone. Like a lot of this lineup has been in kind of shambles, and everybody's been hurt. It's like they're not a bad team against lefties. Like The numbers will tell you that they're kind of average, like they're sitting right here, 18th. But a lot of those numbers are big time boom or bust. So like when they do have their really good outings, you kind of see that. Um, so going back to like what they're going to do today, you're going to see Stu Fairchild, that was assumed top of the lineup. You're going to see Tyler Stevenson, who's been killing lefties. You're going to see Spencer Steer, who's also starting to hit really well at the plate right now, and he matches up really well against any lefty. So I think Ty Block is in for a little bit of trouble. You wouldn't expect that, I guess, even though they did put up 13 runs yesterday. You probably wouldn't expect it to finally come to a head after he just demolished just two of the best teams in the MLB, and now you get to face the Reds. But I think he has a little bit of trouble today. So I do like the Reds bats to put up runs. I'm looking at, backing a lot of those guys I mentioned, Fairchild, Stevenson, Steer. They're going to have to be instrumental to them scoring runs in this game. And then on the other side, Frankie Montas has not been great, for the Reds over the past couple of starts, especially. And if anybody remembers what I talked about last time, and I've been bringing this up a couple times as well, Luke Maile seems to be his personal catcher. I'm not sure if that's going to stick tonight because you would assume that Stevenson's going to be playing. He's probably DHing. They need him in there against the lefty, but Montas has been the one catching, or Maile has been the one catching Montas, and this team has been god-awful. The pitchers have been god-awful, and Maile's been catching. He, I don't know, calls a lot of fastballs, maybe over-aggressively at times. Like when the off-speed is working, you go back to fastballs. That's a bad idea against this Rockies team, especially in cores. So like I was watching the start against the Cardinals, and although like Montas, it was a quality start, 6 innings, 3 runs, he gave up the turkey. He gave up a couple, hits where you could see like the pitch calling was very questionable. It was really bad in the start against the Padres as well. So again, if Maile does end up catching, that's a huge plus. I do think the Rockies bats match up pretty well with Frankie Montas as well. And then we get into the bullpen situation, which always seems to come up when the Rockies are involved. They kind of, because of the blowout, they kept a couple guys on the shelf. They pitched Rogers and Angel for, 63 combined pitches. So you're going to have the whole cast available, but the whole cast is bad. Call it what it is. We've seen like a flash from Nick Mears here and there, maybe a flash from Victor Vodnik, but I mean, Beeks, it seems like he blows the game every time I tune in. They're just very thin right now. A lot of injuries. Justin Lawrence on the IL too. Not that he's really any good, but they're thin. They got a lot of guys that belong in, the minors pitching for them right now. So that bullpen's only getting worse. And I do got to say, I kind of like the Reds bullpen, the way that it's currently set out. Like Nick Martinez has been great. Alexis Diaz has been shaky at times, but he's getting the job done. Cruz has been great. So like, it's not as much a fate of the Reds bullpen as it is like when I do expect runs from the Rockies. I think they're mainly going to come off of Frankie Montas. So again, if we're talking about bullpens, definitely more of a fate of these gentlemen for the Rockies here on the side. But I like the over there. I do think we could see 3 overs in this series. Ashcraft and Hudson. Not sure what that total is going to open at tomorrow, but same deal. I just think this is an offensive series, similar to what we saw in that Guardian series where they came to cores. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Definitely feel a little stronger about the over today than I do tomorrow. But again, you could tell me 100 different things, and I'm glad to go with runs. And these spots can continue to move through these series. Let's go to San Diego and Los Angeles, because this is a series that I don't love. The Padres were court play of the day yesterday, and so is Matt Waldron and everything, which he pitched well, didn't get the strikeouts though that everybody in the world needed, and the Padres ended up losing that game, which hurt a lot of people as well. I don't really know what to do with this series, to be honest with you, the rest of it, because Mazur's coming up to make, I believe, his MLB debut, and you have Patrick Sandoval, who's a lefty pitching against the Padres, which I thought they were starting to turn a corner because they had some decent performances against the lefties. I was sadly mistaken, especially after what we saw. I know Tyler Anderson's been great and been lucky against pretty much every team under the sun, but the Padres are still not great against lefties, and thankfully for them, Patrick Sandoval has just been that bad. So I do think, there could be a little hope for offense on their side, but I just have no interest in getting involved until they show me consistently against the left-handed pitchers. So I'm off there. I definitely think Dylan Cease is probably going to be very popular in game 3, strikeout wise, prop wise, whatever you want to call it. But I'd be down to go to it, especially after Waldron was super corp in game 1 and, didn't come through. There's just a lot of whiffs in that Angels lineup, especially against righties right now, because their main thing is they kill lefties, and Dylan Cease is very obviously not one. Can look at their stats since the beginning of May. They've always honestly been a little lower than people make them out to be. They're kind of league average, sitting around 22.8% whiff rate. But I think that's going to continue to rise with all the guys they have in that lineup who are very strikeout or home run, I guess, essentially, other than, the guys like Willie Calhoun and Luis Rengifo. The rest of that lineup, strikeout stuff is there, especially against off speed. So Dylan Cease should have a pretty good day. I will be looking to back him there. But other than that, not too many thoughts in that series. Can go to San Francisco real quick. I don't have too much in this series really either. In this game specifically, we're going to see Kyle Harrison against Walston. Kyle Harrison, 92, 93 from the left side, super flat. Like, this D-backs team has been bad against lefties. That's another thing that really surprises me, because they were so good against them last year. Early in the season, like, they were decent against them, like from a strikeout perspective, especially. But we look at where they are now. I guess they're getting a little better because they're playing better baseball. They're sitting right at 20th. They were hanging out down here with, the White Sox and Marlins for a while, but got a little better. 89 WRC plus since the month of May. The walk rate is still down, so they're not patient. The strikeout rate is higher than you would think it should be. Top 11, I guess, in baseball, which is surprising. But I do think this should be a tricky spot for Kyle Harrison, which I'm a big Snakes guy right now, which we talked about both on maybe on the first episode of this, but also the BTO exclusive pod that we dropped. Like, combined the Padres, I think everybody's starting to do that as well. They're playing good baseball. Pitching staff's amazing, but I think the forgotten team in the NL West is the D-backs, who, sneakily, they're starting to play a lot better. Their pitching staff has really locked in and given them a lot. A lot of people were fading Ryan Nelson yesterday, who's been god-awful at home, and he gave them a really good start. So everything seems to be starting to come together for the Snakes, at least in the short term, and I want to keep buying that. I think they're going to be one of those teams that starts to put it together. People forget this team made a run of the World Series last year. I don't think it was a fluke. Yeah, they got hot at the right time, but I still want to buy this lineup, this pitching staff, that bullpen that's been really, really bad and can only get better. They've been one of the more unlucky teams in baseball if you look at all the numbers. So give me the Snakes club for the next really a couple weeks in these matchups, and I wouldn't be shocked if it concludes, through the rest of the series, where tonight you get Walston, who, I think has solid stuff. The Giants have been really tough against righties, not nearly as much against lefties, which the numbers kind of trick you on that. Like, if you look at through some of their numbers, it's a lot off of like one or two like big starts, which is why they're sitting up here. But the strikeout rate is there. I do think that those numbers are going to continue to kind of fall, which, again, this is from the start of May till now. So I do like Walston have a pretty decent start. I do like Jordan Montgomery to have a pretty decent start after one of his worst starts of the season when everybody was on him as well. So yeah, not going to be much Snakes fading from me in the near future, especially not in the series. Or the Giants probably sneak one, but I don't really know which one that's going to be. I think the Snakes could have a pretty solid time. Can go back up to the top to some of these series here. Make our way back up to Cleveland, which I really, really would have loved if this was a full wind tunnel game, at least to start the series. It's not. The wind's coming in a little bit, but I still have my questions about Tristan McKenzie. Again, another guy that I've talked about for a while. He's pitching through that ligament in his elbow. It's tricky because he definitely has been a guy that has a little more trouble against left-handed batters, right? And I've talked about this with the Royals. Pitchers like that generally do pretty well against them because they have a lot of righties that'll give you problems, other than Vinny P and like the occasional Michael Massey or MJ Melendez, who's been god-awful and I think could do something decent tonight. Um, a lot of the power comes from the right side. Bobby Witt, Salvi Perez, Michael Garcia at the top. A lot of those guys. Those are who scares you. But for Tristan McKenzie, I can't get over it with him. He has not been good this season. He's looked a little better recently. Maybe he's starting to settle in. Maybe the injury is starting to feel a little better. Who knows? Um, but the 3.77 ERA is deceptive for like what these numbers are telling you over here. 8% walk rate is extremely concerning, especially against lefties. A barrel rate is concerning. He can't keep the ball on the ground either, which is concerning. The velo is all down. He's not getting chases or whiffs or nothing. Like the breaking balls has been the only thing that's really kept them alive. And the Royals, again, I want to ride the waves of that offense, and I do think this could be a series where they struggle at times. I'm not so sure that this is the series though, or this is the game though with Tristan McKenzie on the mound, and I'm not so sure. I guess Logan Allen would be the pitcher to do that against either in game two. So I do kind of lean Royals in this first game, and I wouldn't be surprised. I know the wind's coming in, so the totals moved down from 8.5 to 8. I still wouldn't be surprised if we see runs. I think this could be a game where the bats come to play. And then, Seth Lugo's been great in his own right. He's, discounted on every site, which, again, like Seth Lugo's a guy that I'm pretty tired of fading because the expected numbers have been off the charts for him. Like, he's still rocking. He's 9-1 with a 1.72 ERA. They just find ways to win when he's on the mound. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do it again today. So definitely a strong Royals lean in this first game. Don't mind over 2. I know a lot of people were talking about playing that total. And then beyond that, we don't know what the last pitching matchup is on the rubber match or I guess not the rubber match, but on Thursday for the game 4 of the series. Or no, I'm tripping. That is the first game of the series. So yeah, rubber match. But yeah, Logan Allen's another guy. Can bring him up right here. I've talked about fading him a lot. The hard hit rate, barrel rate, I mean, really just everything. He's been god awful. If you want to talk about Mickey Mouse, look at his 6-3 record with a 5.83 ERA. Obviously, record means near nothing as a starting pitcher, but it just goes to show you like they just win sometimes when they're not supposed to when he's on the mound. He's faced a lot of bad teams, but all of these numbers against the Royals, especially these two right here, barrel rate, hard hit rate, that's what I look for when talking about the Royals. It's a big time no. So can't say I have too much confidence in him either in that matchup. So can move on from there. Talk about the rest of these games. Dodgers, Pittsburgh. That's a rematch of the infamous series where everybody bet the Dodgers to beat them by 1 million, and they stole every coin because the Pirates swept them, which is funny. I do think this is a pitcher's duel series, at least from the start. I think Glass now shoves. The Pirates have really struggled against power pitchers. Jared Jones, while he may give up a Turk or two against the Dodgers lefty, I think he can be fine outside of that. So yeah, that's one of the rare unders I think I do like on the slate in game. I guess the Tuesday games are the game 1/2s for those series. It's hard not to like the Pirates in game 2. Paul Skeens has been fantastic. Everybody's going to be tuned into Skeens against the Dodgers. And James Paxton has just been a guy that's been consistently, fadeable. He started out on, a Tyler Anderson like run where the ERA was near nothing. Now it's back up to 3.29. The walks are a problem. The strikeout stuff is, very obviously not going to be there. The 5.21 xERA with the 3.29 ERA, like these performances have started to come to a head a little bit. And you look at like some of the teams he's faced, you say, the Padres, or not the Padres, the Pirates are the Pirates offense. So, I mean, he could still pitch well against them. Sure, he can. But you look at the teams he's been facing. He was good against the Mets when he was on a little pitch count. But the Reds, like who are decent against lefties, I talked about that. He saw that twice. He wasn't great against them. I think they kind of started the downfall for him. And if we would have seen him go longer against the Mets, I think they could have put up more damage on him as well. So this seems to be his first start back from being on a little bit of a pitch count because of his short rest. This seems to be what do you want, a 5 days rest instead of 6 or 7, which is unusual. And now he's going to be on normal rest, so he's got to be full go. I do like Paxton get touched up a little bit by the Pirates. So probably give me the Pirates there, even though probably the world is going to be on Skeens again. Not too much for me there. Then we get Bueller Falter. I would love to fade Bailey Falter, but Man, the Dodgers bats are so inconsistent. It's tough to get a backing on them because it seems like there's never a situation where they're getting all three of their big three hitting at the same time. It's always like a Mookie night. It's always a Shohei night or a Freddie night. It's never really more than one. So I think that's what you need against Bailey Falter, and I'm not so sure you get that. So yeah, that's probably the end of my thoughts for that. Rays, Marlins, not many thoughts. We don't know who's starting tomorrow in the game 2 of the 2-game set. But today we get Pepe Luzardo, which I think is kind of interesting. I've been talking about the Rays lineup. It's not my favorite against lefties, especially because Alex Jackson is usually in it. And that worst MLB hitter, I could rant about him for weeks. But the Rays lineup against lefties has a lot of whiffs in it. It's been mitigated a little bit recently, though, with the resurgence of Jose Siri. He just had his legacy week, and I do think he could do something against Luzardo. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rays put up some runs today against Luzardo, and then same for the Marlins against Pepio. I think they could put the ball in the air against him, whether it's the stray, Jazz Chisholm day or, Brian De La Cruz, or maybe you stick to the lefties and it's like Jesus Sanchez or Josh Bell. Like, I think they could do a little something. I don't know if that's going to be enough from both sides to really get me involved on the over, because I do feel like it could be a situation in this game where you get spurts of offense and it's like 4-3. I think total is on 7 right now. So we'll see about it. I do lean Rays, but no strong enough play for me in that game, and don't know anything about game 2 just yet. Can move on to Twins Yanks. Yanks are facing the team they own again. Shocker. I don't want to be fading the Yanks really ever until they cool down a little bit. The top of the lineup is just so good. Like Volpe's, getting on base at a solid enough clip. Soto is Barry Bonds. Judge is better than Barry Bonds right now. So it really doesn't matter that like the rest of that lineup can't hit and they're not good. People don't talk about that because they don't need to, because the way that the top of the lineup is carrying them through every game, and obviously like the pitching staff is fantastic and makes it so that can happen. They're just going to continue to win games. It's like now they're facing the Twins, who they own and beat in every single fashion. So you're probably not going to catch me on the Twins at all in this series. I do think Luis Hill, even though I think Bailey Ober is going to be significantly worse, you're probably going to see Ober give up, thanks to one of the big two, Judge and Soto, and then Stanton could probably make an appearance as well. Luis Hill can give up a couple to this Twins lineup. I would say out of the matchups he's had, which the matchups he's had, and the reason like everybody's been on his strikeouts pretty much every time he's taken the field is because he's had some pretty soft matchups over the road trip and everything. Not to say the dude isn't absolutely shoving, because he is, and that's not a secret. He's been absolutely nails. But the Angels, we talked about them. The Mariners, a lot of strikeouts. The White Sox are the White Sox. The Rays are terrible offensively. The Astros were in the middle of their ruts. Like, I don't want to discount it because it's not really me doing that. He's been so good, and I don't want to take away from that. But I would say the Twins, as much strikeout stuff as there is in their lineup, there's definitely a lot more power than I guess a lot of those teams had. So a lot more of the boom or bust element. So I do think the Twins have the power to run into a couple of heel fastballs. But beyond that, I mean, it's still probably the Yankees, as much as I hate to say it throughout this series. Chris Paddock in game 2 of that series. Oh, good luck. Good luck. That's probably a turkey fest waiting to happen, and I'm probably going to have to get involved with squaring up with some of the Yanks bats in that game, because that's going to get ugly, in my opinion. Pablo Lopez, I'm interested to see how he tries to bounce back too. But yeah, again, no real Twin support for me in this series, other than I think they can hit up Gil a little bit, but I don't think it's going to matter. Those Yankees bats in game 2 against Paddock, though, that's a matchup made in heaven right there. So I'll be involved. Tune into BTL. Definitely off some squares and stuff there. Can move to Boston, Atlanta. Don't have huge thoughts on this. Max Fried, Cutter Crawford, game 1. The Braves offense is bad. Red Sox offense also bad. I'm not going to try and catch the flying knife really with either of them, especially with these arms on the mound. Fried has been fantastic, and now he gets a Red Sox team that's not been great at all against lefties. So he's in for a pretty good start, I would say. Maybe lean Braves game 1, because Cutter Crawford has struggled against a couple of these righties as of recent. So, one of the guys who I guess has been the most reliable in the Braves lineup is Marcell Ozuna, and I think he probably profiles best in that matchup. But other than that, Schrellenbach, great strikeout stuff. He could have a solid start. Pivetta, same deal against the Braves. That matchup, I don't know. I like pitching in that series. Not one that I'm willing to go to the grave with, though. Um, can move to another 2-game set here in Chicago between the Cubs and White Sox. Flex and Imanaga going today with a 9.5 total, which I took the over. And it's a windy Wrigley game. I get that. I still think it's a little bit of a high total, but one of the things that really scared me about Shota coming into the season was these games specifically, not necessarily against the White Sox, but um, against and with the wind blowing out in Wrigley when he's a big time fly ball guy. The White Sox also, this may shock you because they're such a bad offense. They don't strike out much really against either side of the plate, but like especially if you look at what they do, like they're just below league average against. I believe I have it on lefties. Yeah, so like I think they could be somewhat decent. I think they could be pesky. I think a guy that I've talked about with Dinger Tuesday that I can't get out of my mind is actually lefty Gavin Sheets. Hoping he gets the start, but he's been crushing baseballs as of recently. You wouldn't know it from like his lefty splits, but you look at like let me try and bring up like an example here. Can show it. He's been extremely unlucky recently. So this is just kind of an example of some of these White Sox hitters because a lot of them are kind of in the same boat, but especially against lefties. Let me find his last one against a lefty. Can find this Jared Koenig video. Like this is kind of the antithesis of what I'm talking about. Um, Stuff like this. Like he's done a lot of this recently where he's facing a lefty, gets really good contact. He demolishes that, straight to the warning track in center field. So stuff like that, if you get the ball up in the air on Shota, that could be a little different. And I think the White Sox do that a couple of times. I still think Shota has like a pretty decent start, but the White Sox bullpen is also behind Flexen, and I think the Cubs bats can wake up. A lot of the reason I think that total, even with the wind, is still a little high and pretty indicative is because, the Cubs offense has been so bad. Like, yes, they're facing Flexen, who nobody likes, but he's actually been kind of good recently. So I do think he gets touched up a little bit. We see the Cubs bats wake up. Shota looks a little human for the second start in a row. Not nearly as bad as I think he got touched up against Milwaukee, but we'll see how it plays out. I do like runs there. I think Eric Fetty could be in line for a really, really good game against the Cubs bats as well, which he's been fantastic sneakily. Nobody really wants to give him his credit, but I'll do it. And, even if that becomes another win game back to back where we see, Wrigley wind blowing out, Fetty's been so great at keeping the ball down and on the ground that, I mean, it really may not matter. 3.12 ERA. He's actually been really exciting to watch in that rotation. So, yeah, that's probably a really good matchup for him. I'll be backing him in some way, especially if the Cubs offense doesn't show me something today against Flexen in that bullpen. That'll give you all the more confidence in the world. But, yeah, we'll move on there. Move to the last series, I think. Yeah, Seattle-Oakland, which this series I do think is going to be just one of those classic Mariners series. It's kind of lower scoring, but I think the A's are going to be pesky here, especially in this game one. I like them. I took them plus 1.5. That's a squad ride. I think the ML is also valid as well. George Kirby has not been fantastic on the road. Not been fantastic at all. And if we look at his numbers specifically, which I can bring up here, I want to show you the exact splits that he has because they're a lot wider than I think people think, just because he's been George Kirby, he's been good overall, but on the road, 5.63 ERA compared to just 2.72 at home. So there's been a significant vulnerability there, and that's even with, I would argue, some plus matchups on the road that he wasn't able to take advantage of. So now, like, it is a hitter's or a pitcher's park in Oakland, but you are going to see decent hitting conditions. So I do think a couple of those lefties who don't strike out all that much could put the ball in play and make things tough for him. So I like that. I like Mitch Spence as well. Has a lot of trouble against righties. The Mariners, guys who really scare you, not named J-Rod, even though he doesn't really scare me at this rate. A lot of the guys are lefties. JP Crawford, I don't want him starting off the Mariners offense well. I don't want Cal Raleigh knocking in home runs, hopefully. They're from the left side. So, like, that's, I wouldn't say the least of my concerns, but I do have a lot of hope for Mitch Spence. And the A's bullpen has also sneakily been good, too. Like, it's been a lot better than it was. And really, it's only been horrible in spots that I talked about, I don't know, like a week or so ago when they're in like horrible rest spots. Which I guess, they lost Michael Kelly. So I don't know who's coming after that. But these guys have been solid. Everybody knows Mason Miller, obviously, and he's coming in fully rested. So you may see him tonight, whether it's a safe situation or not. But these guys have filled in and all been decent. So I'm going to continue to buy in there. I think this is a low scoring type series. I think the A's can steal game one. Maybe in the Cards steal one of those later games. I don't have a strong lean on really either of those. I'm not a Joey Estes fan. So maybe the Mariners get their lick back in that game. But JP Sears against that lineup, I could see something happening. Brian Wu definitely has a really solid matchup, though. So maybe just a square under in that game. But those really, I would say, have to be my thoughts. Conclude my thoughts for these games. Again, didn't have the graphics, so it looks a little, different up here, a little less organized up here. But wanted to make sure I got something out for you guys for this week, even though it is a tad late. We still have a couple of games for each of these series that we can talk about. And we'll definitely be talking about them more on BTL. We did today, and then we'll do some more tomorrow. There will be one out normal time, probably Friday morning, going over the series starting for the weekend, and we'll be on business as usual there. But if you guys stayed this long, appreciate you for tuning in. Again, make sure you tap into the Twitter. Let me know which games you want to hear out, which matchups you want to hear about right before I record them, every, I don't know, twice a week. But yeah, be sure to tune in. Again, appreciate you. Good luck on your bets, and let's have some solid days. Get some green in the bow.